It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays. And this was something that I kept trying to figure out how to drill down into some of the things I've been thinking about regarding the, social or environmental element of mental health without getting into the fucking Ashley Tisdale mommy group drama that some people care very much about, some people don't, and it's too freaking complicated. So basically, the I am exploring the idea that when you are not happy about something, you should just shut your mouth and leave instead of telling people what the problem is. And the minute you tell people what the problem is, then everything you say, how you said it, what you said, your exact word choice gets picked apart. And if you are no less than perfect, then that's all it becomes about. And this is not a recipe for good friendships, for a feeling of being supported. And it's certainly not a recipe for good mental health. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. This idea, people are very hesitant, I understand why, to speak up when something's bothering them for the reasons I just outlined. But people also spend a huge amount of cognitive load second guessing really simple things. And it's interesting that the View is like, she shouldn't have said anything. She shouldn't have caused drama in a group chat. She should have just left the group chat. The fact that they're saying that, one, The View, where they get paid to gossip about shit, but also I have multiple clients who are extremely, I would go so far as to say traumatized from people just disappearing and them not knowing why. It has a particularly bad impact on autistic people, people on the spectrum, but it's not good for anybody. And I talk about this a lot, that I will have the conversation. I will be a bitch, right? Because I don't want people to constantly be questioning if there's a problem where I'm concerned. If there's a problem, I'll tell them there's a problem. If I don't tell them there's a problem, there's no problem. This seems like the path to happiness. And there have been a couple things, because, everybody's crazy busy, overextended, sick, or they were sick, so they're trying to catch up. And there's been a few times it was like, oh, that person's been like a lot quieter lately. Did I do something? And then I'm like, nope, they're not that kind of person. They're the kind of person, if there was an issue, they would tell me. It's fine. And that kind of trust is invaluable. And the fact that you have the majority of online discourse telling people that that is wrong, holy crap, normal sucks, right? And there are good ways and there are less good ways to do this. A lot of the time, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't know how to set boundaries, who resents boundaries, sometimes because of a personality disorder, that conversation will not go well no matter what you do. And then you've got some decisions to make, But other than that, someone who is regulated, or somebody who can recognize that they struggle with emotional regulation, you can go like, look, this isn't working for me. Can we work this out? And unfortunately, I find so often people's concerns are just dismissed or minimized. And that's taught. You're often taught by mimicry. But something as simple as, look, if you're in charge of this, if you're my go-to person for this, I need to know you have this. You cannot disappear for weeks at a time and be out of contact. That is fair. That is fair for someone to want. If you can't do that, you can't be that person for that person. And that is fine. There is no moral failing there at all. But if you want to preserve the friendship, you need to have that conversation, or it's not going to work. It isn't. You are going to lose the friendship because you can't accept losing that particular responsibility that isn't fair to anybody involved to begin with. Like, it's not fair to the person who's doing something that they're ill-suited for. If you keep trying to drive someone to work and it's not working out and they constantly end up late, it's better to find a workable solution, for instance, than for them to keep being late for work. Like, maybe it's not reasonable for them to expect you to get them there to begin with. Maybe they should be responsible for their own transportation. But if you offer, or if that's the deal, they have to get to work on time, right? So if you have the conversation, it's amazing what novel solutions people can come up with when you have the conversation. If you're not willing to have the conversation, those solutions can't come. And that's the problem with saying, she shouldn't have said anything. She should have just laughed. Like, that. Have you ever been in a group chat or a Discord where someone just left? It is fucking drama, man. People go chasing that person and want to know why they left. And it becomes this big thing and people start speculating and assuming, oh my God, just leaving does not reduce drama. And it's amazing to me that so many people think it does. It doesn't. Why? Because it's uncertainty. And uncertainty drives a particular part of our brain that is obsessed with where we fit in the world insane. And we cannot have absolute certainty in anything. Well, in simple things, but anything regarding a relationship. Can you be absolutely certain that relationship is going to last forever? Well, no. There's a lot of unforeseen circumstances. Somebody can get a traumatic brain injury and their entire personality changes, right? That's not, if you need that in order to start relationships, it's not possible. And that, I really think, is a lot of the reason that, Gen Z just isn't dating. They've been raised to think that if, it's not practically guaranteed that you will succeed, don't even try. They haven't been taught to just not even get rejected, like not even think about it that way. Because, I think when I'm like working trade shows or something like that and somebody isn't interested in the product, do I feel rejected? Like, no. My job is to sell it to the people who actually want it. If someone doesn't wear lipstick, I'm not going to sell them lipstick. Like, it's that simple. And so, thinking the whole idea of how you define your social groups, and for example, you want the people who are around you right now, you want to feel like they have your back. They only talk about you behind their back because they're concerned not just to gossip. You can set, that's a big one for me. And, when someone holds some sort of thing that, especially anything social, especially anything public facing, if something happened months ago and they didn't tell me, they disagreed with how I was handling it at the time, they throw it in my face in the middle of another argument, that relationship is over unless they see why it is wrong right away. Because for me, I can't have that. I've been stabbed in the back. I've been lied about in public way too often. And I know I can't control what I don't know, right? But when somebody just shows me who they are in that regard and is unrepentant, you believe them the first time. And that's the thing about finding really good friends. You have to cut away the not great friends. And it took being stalked and menaced for me to learn this lesson because, I was of the school of, I don't want to be excluded, so don't exclude anybody. Exclusion is painful. It is. It's not therapy this week is about exclusion because it is legit a painful thing. And that doesn't mean you should never experience it. We just have to say it hurts. And I think that there is a difference between going, look, I want to invite you. I need something from you, right? That I need you to not bring up this topic, or I need you to watch when other people are becoming uncomfortable. And then the person can say, look, I have a hard time telling when someone is uncomfortable. I need them to tell me. Fair. But okay, we did that before and you blew up on them. If you want people to tell them, you have to not blow up because you're embarrassed. Fair? Fair. Okay. Everybody gets something there. Everybody matters. As opposed to just, well, the clique is determined we're going to leave this person out. And then we're going to put the story up on Instagram and they're going to find out about it later and know they were excluded. What the fuck? That's bullying. That's asshole behavior. And the fact that it has become so normalized is fucked up. And the only way to not deal with that shit is to not deal with people who do that shit. And if you discover somebody's done that to you, that is not your fault, Now, I think it's worth having the conversation a few times because, I know that sometimes it's like the wrong email got used, an old email, or it auto-completed wrong, or something went bluey and it was an innocent mistake. Sometimes it's not. And I am a big believer in just, I have no time for that bullshit. And I got some really great people in my life right now. And that is a direct, I believe, a direct result of not accepting bullshit. And yes, taking the short-term hit and getting lied about to get away from people who had priorities that were not good for me, including talking shit about me online. And this is a real challenge when we talk about mental health stigma, because I firmly believe that you should give people a chance regardless of diagnosis. I have learned the hard way too many times that if they're not doing the work, you got to get out of the blast radius. And that's not mental health stigma to say, when somebody becomes symptomatic, it can be self-destructive. It can be destructive for the people around them. And when third parties are getting affected, especially if it's a work thing, my responsibility is, to do the right thing, because I want people to be able to trust me that I will not steer them into a circumstance that is suboptimal because I feel bad for somebody. And it's tough because people get very upset, and I believe their upset is real, and they handle it really badly. and no one else around them will really call them on their shit. And getting called on your shit does not feel good. Not in the short term. But let me tell you, in the long term, it's so much more reassuring to know that somebody will tell you when there's a problem. Because then you don't constantly have to worry. And it fills up all this bandwidth for better things. It reduces the stress you carry around. You can save your stress for the things you really need it for, not bullshit that is avoidable. And does that mean you'll have fewer friends? Yeah, that's okay. Right? Does that mean that some people will talk shit about you online? Yeah, and that's hard. But the reality is that if you want to accomplish anything of any significance, people are gonna talk shit. There's nothing you can do about that. People just, it's crabs in the bucket, man. Some people just want to destroy other people's joy because they themselves are miserable. And it's hard. And I mean, one practice that I find is just going, look, this group isn't right for me. I don't need to obsess whether people are good or bad people. I just know that they're not good for me. And that is a lot easier to do in business. I'm great at that in business. You know, something's affecting my business. I know indecision. This is not okay. But with personal stuff, I realize I don't know how to describe it because I didn't turn a blind eye. You know, I saw some people I knew being racist, you know, and things like that. I saw the bigotry in people, and my attitude is kind of like everybody's got something, and we don't necessarily know what they are. And so I constantly try to challenge myself in that way. But when somebody just becomes unrepentant, I used to think, well, you know, I gotta not give up on them because I want to coax them away from the homophobia, the racism, the transphobia, all that stuff. And my perspective on that has really changed lately, because what I've realized is that the people around me were having to eat the shit of this person who, you know, may not overall be a bad person, but if one of your friends is racist and another of your friends is black, that is forcing you to choose. If the person's racist against black people or Asian people or Indian people, or I hate that Muslim people get lumped in. They're brown people, you know, and there are plenty of brown people who are Christians. Just saying. There are brown people who are Jewish. And then, you know, people like the Baha'i. What? Zoroastrians. What? The fact that, you know, person who looks Middle Eastern or South Asian, Muslim, that's its own problem. And then there's different kinds of Islam too. But, you know, the point is sometimes you do get put in situations where it is a trolley problem. You have to choose. And what a lot of people do is, I don't want to get involved, which to me is cowardly. That is not a way to get good friendships long term, because you've just showed that you don't have your friends' backs. I believe in taking the hit and going, nope, I think what you're doing is wrong. I do think, you know, here is why what I think you said was racist. I present evidence. Like, I don't just, I feel that you're being racist. No, because that's done to me. I don't like that. I will present a case to the person and said, look, This is just what you were saying about Inuit people or whatever is just factually inaccurate. And, my other friend with an indigenous background saw you say that, has thoughts. They're allowed to have those thoughts. Do something, If they won't, bye. Because I'm sorry. I say things that I don't know are problems. And someone says, you know what that means, right? I'm like, no, I did not know what that meant. And the best way to show you didn't know what it meant is to stop doing it. Or at least make an effort to stop doing it. I don't believe in turning a blind eye to that stuff. I used to want to give people chances. Now, I realize that you got to find a happy medium between not demanding perfection, meaning allowing people to make mistakes, and recognizing that in order for that system to work, the person has to acknowledge that it was a mistake instead of, well, how was I supposed to know that? It's like, okay, you didn't know. I believe you, but now you do. So, if the person doesn't say, okay, I'll watch it going forward. If they don't say that, listen to that, because that's basic. And I am, this is a thorny issue with modern reality, because it's hard to make friends now. It is. And that is not a skill issue entirely. There are, I think it's more of an expectation issue than a skill issue. Like, you're going to feel awkward. You're going to not know what to do. It's going to be a little stressful walking to a group of people you don't know. You may make an ass out of yourself. I do it all the time. For fuck's sake, on Twitch, I was singing a song about fast food restaurants last week, and it became hilarious because I ran with it. I can laugh at myself enough that I don't get, and it's years of performing. I think without that, because I'm so introverted, I know, right? My social battery does run out. I do get overwhelmed with other people's stuff. I do, if I let myself, overthink social exchanges. I do all of this stuff, but I've found a way to navigate through it. And, I consider myself fortunate that because I am introverted, I need fewer friends. And I realized, like, in hindsight, there were people in the past, they were very extroverted people, and they had very few friends. And that doesn't just happen. I recognize in the rear view, something was really wrong there. And that is not just circumstance when someone's an extrovert. Now, you don't need a ton of friends. You don't. You need good friends. And I really do think that community is the greatest social program out there. It is, let's stop talking about socialism. Let's start talking about community. But, you can't force people to do community. People have to want to do community. Oh, well, maybe that's a problem with your thinking. Because if you're going into things with a coercive mindset, no one's going to want to be around that. The best way to foster, places where people feel, and not everybody, people are going to find reasons to complain about shit. But sometimes you just don't fit in. I know there's places I don't fit in. My God, these mommy groups? Fuck. I mean, other moms are, I did not have children by choice. Biology was not kind to me. But every time I see one of these fucking mom groups, I'm like, maybe I got off easy. You know, it's there are pros and cons to everything. But whoo, yeah. And I mentioned being a mother. Well, what about adopting? I'm not getting into that now. But the point is, I see this stuff, and there are so many moments with shit like this going on where I'm like, thank God I don't have kids. 'Cause the idea that you should just be around a group of other women and you feel like shit when you're there because your kids play together. One of the best skills a kid can learn is that people come and people go and some stay. And it's okay that some people come and some people go as long as some stay. And there are skills that will up your odds there. And one is communication. Like I said before, have the awkward conversation. Tell people what the problem is. And the other is care. And, I feel excluded versus, this is so high school. You're a bully, And in the case of not being invited and finding out on Instagram, you didn't feel excluded. You were excluded. But, saying, look, I would rather you tell me if I'm doing something wrong so I can adapt, because I have no ill intentions, than to just not invite me. But that's the point where I start going, if I have to tell someone that, are these my people? Probably not, because my people will have that conversation. And that's okay. These are subjective. No, I think there are objective reasons to have the conversation. But some people are fine with surface socialization. They don't need the meaningful connections. They don't require the same amount of discretion that, someone like me, because not only am I in the media, but so is my husband. And so and because he has a higher profile than me by like a lot, I am very aware that people are going to blame me for some of the things he does, even though I didn't even know he did it, which is why I sympathize with Hilary Duff with her husband going fucking nuts on Ashley Tisdale recently over a mommy group. But I do have to recognize that there are brands to consider, and my freedom of expression is curbed because you gotta maintain employment. So people who will lie about me and claim I'm worse than I am, and even I'm fully aware I'm an acquired taste, but I know I mean well. I know I am constantly working on myself. And I know I consider being deliberately mean to someone and being sarcastic or having a difficult conversation. They are not the same thing for me. And not everyone sees it that way. And this is why values work is so important, right? Because to me, knowing something might hurt is not the same thing as saying it to hurt. Because to me, saying it now when it's smaller, so you minimize the pain, that's a form of kindness. That's consideration. Because there are a lot of circumstances where you can't have no hurt. You can't have no unpleasantness. So you just have to minimize it. Tough conversations happen. If you never have the tough conversation, you're never going to have a meaningful relationship in your entire life. There's always these breakdowns and things. They can't, rupture and repair model of friendships, right? And the number of people that there is a disagreement and I tell them a tough truth and like, she was deliberately cruel. No, I know what was in my head. But I do think it interesting that saying, look, if I'm relying on you for business, you have to be there. You can't fuck off for weeks at a time, is considered cruelty in some circles. And hey, maybe there are reasons for that, but those aren't my people. Gossipers, not my people. Because of what I do, If someone worked in law enforcement, it's amazing how many gossips work in law enforcement. But, I have friends in law enforcement, and the reason they trust me is I don't go telling people about shit they told me because I could get in a lot of trouble. But people in those jobs do need someone to confide in. They need community. And they need to know you have discretion. Other people, no, they don't need that. And I know a lot of people who do not care if other people know their business. We're all different. These are not necessarily better or worse, but you're never going to feel like you fit somewhere if, you don't know, one, what's going to make you feel like you fit, and two, you're not willing to walk away from situations where you definitely don't fit. So if you want more on this, that's what It's Not Therapy is about. This week I have more time to break down grind, and it's for a more general audience. It's not for geek shit. I come here to talk about things like Nifty from Has Been Hotel. Oh my God, I'm pretty sure this is not licensed shit, but it's Nifty, man. I love Nifty. Yay, pain. I love being taught. Nifty is the freaking best. Even though she never says what she's really thinking. She's trying so hard, but she doesn't like it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching and be well.